welcome to Gray Matter. I think you're really going to enjoy the guest we have on today. This is a lady who is a lawyer for the man who might be the most interesting and challenging client, President Donald Trump. And she has been lead counsel on some very high-profile landmark cases, and she's authored a couple of really compelling books about them. One is called Stealing Your Vote, which concerns election fraud. That was released a couple of years ago. And then more recently, she's published a book called Defiant, which deals with the very, if it might be the legal issue of our time, which is lawfare. So welcome to the show, Christina. It's great to have on our program.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so before we introduce you properly, as we always do, we have some framing aphorisms to kind of set up our discussion.
Okay.
The first is from J.K. Rowling, whose political views I don't usually care for, but let's face it, she's really great with words. She posted this out on her X page recently. She said, "If you believe free speech is for you but not your political opponents, you're illiberal. If no contrary evidence could change your beliefs, you're fundamentalist. If you believe the state should punish those with contrary views, you're a totalitarian. If you believe that political opponents should be punished with violence or death, you're a terrorist." From somebody whose political views I agree with a lot more, President Donald Trump, he said this. He said, "Leaders, true leaders, take responsibility for the success of the team and understand that they must also take responsibility for the failure." I really like that quote. And then from somebody who is maybe at the opposite end of the political spectrum from Donald Trump, former Premier Joseph Stalin, who said, "It is enough that the people know there was an election. The people who cast the votes decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything." And then from the person who is really the man of the age everyone is talking about, the late Charlie Kirk, who said, "To be a Christian means to forgive the inexcusable because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you." Who do we have on the show today? As we said, Christina Bobb. She's a lawyer. She's author of a couple of books. One is called Stealing Your Vote, the inside story of the 2020 election and what it means for 2024. She's also an investigative reporter, and she's written more recently a book called Defiant. So she's acted for Donald Trump. She's been a correspondent on One America News Network, where she reported almost exclusively on election integrity. She began her legal career in the United States Marine Corps, and she served as a defense counsel representing Marines and sailors in court-martial administrative separation hearings. That would qualify. That's good fodder for a book in and to itself, Christina. I'd love to read that one. She's also served overseas in a number of tours, including Helmand Province, Afghanistan, Stuttgart, Germany. After her military service, she transitioned to private practice at Higgs, Fletcher, and Mack LLP in San Diego, and then to Washington, D.C., where she held executive-level positions within the Department of Homeland Security, and she currently serves as attorney for President Donald J. Trump. And so I'd like to start there, Christina, if you would. As a lawyer myself, I have to ask you, what is it like to be the lawyer for Donald Trump? I would think that this is a real adventure in client management. What is it like being the lawyer for Donald Trump?
Oh, I mean, I love President Trump. He's fantastic, and thankfully he's now back in the White House. So, all of our roles have shifted a little bit, but he's wonderful. Donald Trump is not the problem. That's not the issue. It's all of the crazy lawfare that has come against him, against me, against anybody who supports him. I'm currently a criminal defendant in a case in Arizona from my time as a reporter, actually, from my reporting on the 2020 election. I was subpoenaed personally, I want to say, I don't know, maybe 6 times, 7 times over the last 3 years. I was indicted. I was sued for $1.6 billion. I had my TSA clearance taken away from me. It's just been an absolute nightmare. So I'm thrilled that he's back in office. I'm finally able to put the story out of everything that was going on because, as you know, as an attorney, you can't really put the information out while there's ongoing litigation. Right. And so now that the litigation is behind him, I was the attorney on site during the Mar-a-Lago raid. I met with the Department of Justice and the FBI 2 months prior to the raid. I've got all the text messages and emails in the book. Everybody can see it. The full title is Defiant Inside the Mar-a-Lago Raid and the Left's Ongoing Lawfare. Right. and you get all of the perspective of everything that transpired. And so, the reader can make up their own mind. I think it's pretty egregious what they did. But we're finally at a point where we can put that information out. And President Trump did the foreword for the book, which I'm really excited about. So the reader will get something from him as well.
Well, it sounds as though your time in the Marine Corps set you up very well for your style of law practice. Obviously,
Yeah.
you're going where most people would not go, and that's probably why you're attracting so much flack and fire. I want to talk to you about the first book that you did on election interference, because this is a very important issue, not only in the United States, but also in Canada. I don't know if you know this, but our last four federal elections all have proven Chinese interference. And so with this idea of election fraud is something that is very important to our viewers and listeners, not only in the United States, but also in Canada. So I'm interested to know what drew you to that subject initially for your first book.
Well, I was reporting on the election. So I was at the White House on November 3rd, 2020, which was election day here. And it was odd. I mean, the whole election itself was very weird. The way it had been conducted, the way these governors in many of the swing states had created these emergency orders and suddenly had to completely change the law and change the procedure for the election. And then they stopped counting, and then they kicked Republicans out, and then they boarded up the windows, and then they wouldn't let anybody, the whole thing was very strange. And so I just started reporting on that. And as you're aware, it became a hot topic. They tried very hard to censor us, very, very hard to move on to a story. On election night, the narrative that was pushed from mainstream media was there's no evidence of fraud. This is the most secure election in U.S. history, blah, 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 blah. They didn't have any evidence for any of that, but that's what they were telling everybody. So I just stuck with it. And it was through my reporting that I ended up meeting the president. And I just reported from election night all the way until I started working for the president in 2022. I just was reporting on everything that was coming out of these states. They're all doing audits. I was on the ground in Arizona for the Arizona audit, and I went to Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. I went all over the place, just kind of trying to figure out what was going on as a reporter. And I was just keeping record of everything that I was seeing and the people I was interviewing and what the eyewitnesses on the ground were saying. And more importantly, the response from elected officials. A lot of the Republican elected officials were very opposed to the transparency about the election, which was strange to me. I thought the Republican response was very weird. And so the way I like to summarize stealing your vote is that Democrats cheated, but Republicans covered it up. So it just became the story grew and grew and grew. And, I felt like I had to put out the information that I had found.
Is the publication of your book part of the reason why you're being prosecuted and sort of vilified by the left? Is that part of the reason, the publication of the book, or is it more having to do with your legal work on behalf of President Trump?
Well, it's all about my reporting. So the book, is part of it, but it really was my reporting on the 2020 election and my reporting on the audit, the clearing up the audit. Now, the Attorney General will claim, no, it was because she was working for Rudy Giuliani. They actually say it was because I was working for Donald Trump. I didn't work for Donald Trump until 2022, so They are wrong. The Attorney General doesn't even know the timeline of you're an attorney, you have a timeline of the events, right? And they claim that I was an attorney for Donald Trump, but I did not become an attorney for Donald Trump until 2022. So, and I can prove that. I'm more than willing to say that open right now, despite the fact that I'm still a criminal defendant. There's no way they're going to be able to say that I was an attorney for the president. I wasn't. But I was a reporter. But as you know, in the beginning of a criminal case, you have initial disclosures from the prosecutors, right? They have to turn over the information that they're claiming is incriminating you. And everything that they turned over on me was my reports. So I don't know how they're going to say they weren't indicting me for my reporting when all of the evidence against me is my reporting. But that's what they're claiming.
Well, it sounds like you have an excellent defense. I presume you have outstanding attorneys So I
Yeah.
hope that all turns out well for you.
Well, thank you. The indictment has been thrown out, so that's good.
Good.
The court is refusing to close the case for now, which is horrible because it's leaving us all to languish, rack up more legal fees.
Yeah.
Having an open criminal case is a huge problem just for your
Oh,
everyday
yeah.
life.
Oh, yeah.
And so I wish the court would just close the case, but they haven't done it yet. But thankfully, the indictment has been thrown out.
Wow. But unfortunately, this hasn't interfered with your ability to practice law, though, has it?
No, it has not.
Good.
Not this case.
Good.
I mean,
Good.
I was for the Mar-a-Lago case. I did have to defend my bar license there, but thankfully I successfully defended it.
Wow. Well, you're a formidable litigant, obviously. So just talking about your first book before we move on and talk about
Yeah.
the one that you just released, without spoiling the outcome,
Yeah.
was your conclusion about the 2020 election that it was effectively stolen?
Yes.
Or do you go that far?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have I can't tell you exactly what the numbers were. I don't know that we'll ever know the numbers.
Yeah.
But I think it's pretty clear that the election was stolen, and they're using the fact that we don't have specific numbers to say, oh, we can't confirm or deny anything. No. We can confirm the election was stolen.
Right.
I think at the very least, what is provable is that the election was conducted illegally. It was an illegal election. The way the governors changed the law at the last minute and all of these mail-in ballots flooded in at the last minute, none of that was legal. But that's what they did. And so whether you want to say it was stolen through the machines or through mail-in ballots or through keeping Republicans out or whatever, there's a million different ways, maybe not a million. There's probably a good dozen ways that they manipulated the election. All of it manipulated in favor of Joe Biden.
Right.
But I think at the very least, the conclusive statement that we can make is that the election was conducted illegally.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Joe Biden, I saw Donald Trump signing some executive orders the other day, and he said something about Joe Biden that was interesting. He sort of almost gave him a bit of a pass. He said, a lot of the stuff that was happening, he was talking about the open borders and mass immigration into the U.S. during the Biden administration. And President Trump said, that Joe Biden probably didn't know anything about that was going on. Is that the general consensus of the current Trump administration, that really Joe Biden was not the effective president and wasn't doing all these things like lawfare, that really there were other people, other apparatchiks who were operating the government at the time?
Yeah, I think that, I can't speak for the admin, but I'm pretty sure they would agree with that statement. But quite honestly, I think that's the view of most Americans at this point, Republican and Democrat. I mean, the Democrats have even come out and tried to pretend like they weren't hiding the fact that Joe Biden is completely senile. But even Jake Tapper from CNN, who was largely responsible, one of the most influential liberal voices.
This is the best Joe Biden. I remember.
Yeah, right, exactly. Even he is like, he wrote a book, Original Sin, basically saying like, the media covered up the fact that he's senile. Yeah, you were the biggest one doing it. Like, how on earth are you going to now try to pretend like you weren't part of the problem? So, they're all, I think both sides are pretty confident that Joe Biden was not in control of the government.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the things that the Biden administration did, even if it wasn't Joe Biden. One of the big ones is lawfare. And of course, you know a lot about this.
Yeah.
You've written now your second book about it. Of course, it focuses on MarALago, but it's broader than that. So let's start with this. For the people who don't know and don't understand, or maybe you don't have a clear understanding of it, is what do you mean by the term lawfare?
Lawfare it's a weapon that, and anybody, I mean, the left tends to use it at least more effectively than the right. It's bringing, whether it's a civil case or a criminal prosecution, for purposes other than justice, meaning you want to harass somebody, you want to obstruct a presidential campaign or any political campaign, you bring it for political reasons, to smear somebody, where the outcome of the case doesn't really matter. There's another motivation other than justice for bringing a lawsuit or a criminal matter.
Now, we've seen a kind of a proliferation of this in recent years, but is it a new thing, or is it an old idea that's been sort of revived?
I think it's an old idea. That's a very good question. I don't personally know off the top of my head what's the first case that historically we kind of consider to be lawfare. I don't know that, but I don't think this is anything new. I think it's a tool that's quite effective that, and I say the left, but it's not just the left, but that the
It's
left
mostly
has,
them, let's face it.
it is mostly them by far. That they've been using so effectively that it's kind of their favorite tool. And it's getting to the point where it's not sustainable. It's destroying our country. It's destroying our justice system. It's just, I mean, it's getting to the point where I think it's illegal. I mean, the cases that they brought against Donald Trump, I'd say, are illegal. The cases that they have brought against me, and Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin, and Georgia, I think those were illegal cases. Georgia, I don't know if you saw today, but the Supreme Court of Georgia just denied Fani Willis's appeal, or her cert petition for appeal. So she's disqualified. So that case, she is officially done. No more recourse for her. She's off that case. So now in Georgia, they're waiting to see if there's going to be another prosecutor that steps up to pick up the case for her and try to carry that baton. I doubt it. I can't imagine any other prosecutor wanting that case.
Right.
But that's a huge win for the Trump electors and the Trump associates that are indicted in Georgia. And then last week, I don't know if you saw, but Michigan threw out the alternate electors case, saying that they were all just exercising their civil rights.
Yes. I watched a video of you talking about that. That's a very important decision, isn't it?
Huge. Yeah. And Michigan really was the template for Fani Willis was kind of doing her own thing. The RICO case that she brought was very weird and bizarre, and it was
embarrassing.
It was embarrassing. It never went anywhere because the entire case, almost from inception, was all about her relationship with her boyfriend that she hired to prosecute.
It was like
her
a
political
Netflix series.
It probably will be a Netflix series at some point. It's so embarrassingly bad. So her case is a little bit different, but for the Michigan case, that was kind of the template case for the alternate electors.
Did you work on that one, Christina?
No, I'm being prosecuted for it in Arizona.
Oh, okay.
I'm a defendant. So, well, I mean, technically, I guess I did work on it, but as a defendant. But so the prosecution that they brought in Michigan is the same prosecution, like the same template that they used in Arizona and Nevada and Wisconsin. Right. And so the fact that Michigan fell is great because that's the template. And so now we need it to purge the other states as well.
And Michigan is a pretty blue state, isn't it?
Yes.
So you're sort of in the heart of the enemy there.
You're exactly right. And the judge that dismissed it, I give her a lot of credit, Judge Simmons. She is a black female judge who was appointed by a Democrat. So I don't know her political leanings, but just based on the fact she was appointed by a Democrat governor, I tend to believe she's probably liberal. And she made a great ruling. So I give her a lot of credit for that. Yeah.
Fancy a judge setting aside their personal political prejudices to make a fair and impartial ruling based upon fact and law.
I know.
Who would have thought? That may be the best story of all.
It is. I mean, honestly, she really deserves to be recognized for being a fair and impartial judge because
you just did it.
Yeah.
So, and you have a lot of followers, so probably a lot of people are going to hear that statement. So that's good news. Talking about Mar-a-Lago, though, this was a really fascinating situation. This was all over the news. Of course, Donald Trump, one of, if not the most, one of the most famous people in the world.
Yeah.
And the government of the United States executes a raid on his palatial home. And we really hadn't seen anything like this, maybe since the O.J. Simpson, the white Bronco.
Yeah.
What was the origin story of the Mar-a-Lago raid? Like, what was the beginning? Whose idea was this?
Well, that's a great question. I'm hoping the FBI is investigating that and going to bring prosecutions because they never had probable cause to execute a raid. They never had probable cause to even request a search warrant. And then the judge that they went to get the search warrant was conflicted out by his own admission. Just weeks prior, he had recused himself from a Trump v. Clinton case because he said he wasn't able to be impartial when it came to Donald Trump. And then that's the judge they go to get a search warrant with an affidavit that was untruthful. They lied in the affidavit and they withheld information from the judge. They didn't tell the judge that President Trump himself had said to their faces, you can see whatever you want. I'm an open book. I'm happy to, would you like a tour of Mar-a-Lago? I mean, he was incredibly accommodating. They didn't include any of that information in the search warrant. And they never had probable cause to believe that he had done anything improper with his documents. I mean, he was legally and lawfully entitled to every document that he had possession of. He has never been outside of the law on any of his possession of documents. And another thing that I think that was not very well reported at the time, back in 2022 when all this was going on, is the fact that the case was originating out of Washington, D.C. The grand jury that they had assembled was a Washington, D.C. grand jury, which is very weird because I worked in Florida.
That was by design, though, wasn't it?
Well, of course, because they'd much rather prosecute him in Washington, D.C. They never, ever wanted to bring a case against Donald Trump in Florida. I mean, why would they want to do that? They had to do it because they never had enough probable cause to bring it in Washington, D.C. So when I was called to D.C. to get interrogated and interviewed by the Department of Justice and the FBI, and I was subpoenaed to testify before the grand jury, that all happened here in Washington, D.C. I lived in Florida. I worked in Florida. I met with President Trump in Florida. I met with DOJ and the FBI in Florida. I was part of the raid in Florida. All of my involvement, everything was in Florida, yet I was subpoenaed to come to Washington, D.C. because they were trying to create a case in D.C. and there was just no evidence of a crime that they could even assemble before a grand jury to ask for an indictment. They could not get an indictment. So they had to move it to Florida.
So this is really, in the end, it was a giant fishing expedition, wasn't it?
Yeah. They were, I speculate that they believed, if we can just get into Mar-a-Lago, we'll be able to find something to frame him for something.
Yeah.
And they couldn't. There was just nothing.
This is one of the things that I find a lot of things very remarkable about President Trump. But one of the most remarkable things is even with all the technology that's available, even though he's a man well into his 70s who has been in public life for like 50 years, and all of these really evil people trying very hard to dig up dirt on him, they're never able to do it. And the only conclusion I can draw from that is that he must live a very clean lifestyle. He's really not doing all of the Hunter Biden stuff behind the closed doors, is he?
He's very straight-laced. I mean, he's extravagant, but but he doesn't drink. He doesn't do drugs.
He said he doesn't even drink a beer.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. I mean, his greatest vice, I think, is Diet Coke, or Coke. He loves his Diet Coke or maybe McDonald's or whatever. But no, he lives a very straightforward life. It's beautiful. It's extravagant, but there's no weird parties. There's nothing weird about it. It's actually pretty inspiring.
It is.
So,
it is, and it's that's not, and I you would know this better than most people, but the truth about politicians is that often the person that you see, the face that you see publicly, is very different than who they are privately, and I think. So it's understandable that people would try and sort of paint that picture of Donald Trump, but no one's been able to do that. And I think that's true. That's really incredible, isn't it?
It's great. And I would actually challenge to say it's probably the opposite, that most people who don't like Donald Trump's public persona, or let me say it this way, I think what you see publicly is exactly who he is. He's not faking anything. I like all that. I actually would go a little bit further, though, and I would say I would bet that most people who don't like Donald Trump or haven't liked Donald Trump in the past, because just by his public persona, not people who know him personally, but just people who don't like his public persona, if and when they actually meet him, he's so much better than what they thought he would be. Like, I think Bill Maher is a great example of that. He doesn't like Donald Trump. He's not conservative. No. He doesn't like the policies, but he had a meeting with Donald Trump, or a chance to speak with the president, and he came out of it kind of laughing, going, okay, I get it. I still don't agree with his policies, but like, he can respect him as a person. And so I think that's actually, if anything, it's either what you see is what you get, You love him. You love his persona. You're going to love him when you meet him. If you don't like his public persona, you'll like him when you meet him.
Right. And, speaking of Donald Trump, he has a very strong sense of justice. And it kind of leads me into my next question. You'll recall this, and maybe some other people will. Back in the 2016 election campaign, there was sort of this thing about, he was going to put Hillary in jail. But then when he became president, he really stayed his hand. And I remember him saying words to the effect that even though there was a lot of evidence to do that, apparently, he stayed the hand because he thought that would be really bad for the country.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, given all this lawfare and all that he suffered, all that people like you have suffered, do you think that's going to change? I mean, do you think that he's going to instruct the Pam Bondi to actually look further into, for example, the involvement of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton in the whole Russia hoax, things like that? Do you think that the lawfare is going to happen now, working the other way?
Yeah.
Or do you think Donald Trump is going to stick to the original plan from his first administration? What are your thoughts there?
No, his original plan in the first administration was to allow the nation to heal. That was his quote, to allow Hillary to heal. And the left came after him with everything they possibly could, tried to destroy him, tried to kill him, tried to throw him in jail, tried to bankrupt him. I mean, they tried to absolutely destroy him, his family, and everything he believed in. So he knows better than anybody that we can't afford to make that mistake twice. You have to throw these people in jail. And I'm not saying throw everybody in jail, but you have to prosecute enough people to the point that they stop. Because they have made it abundantly clear, even just last week with the Charlie Kirk assassination, they've made it abundantly clear they're not going to stop until they are stopped. And that's what Donald Trump is trying to do. Donald Trump is protecting the rest of us. He knows the left will just come for us. Once he's gone, once he, is done with his political career or moves on to something else or whatever he does after his presidency, he knows they're still coming for us. And he won't be in the middle. He says it best. He says, they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in the way. And so he knows that he's got to be the one to stop them. So we already have heard that Pam Bondi has opened grand jury investigations, I think in a few different places, which is great. So I will be shocked if we don't see indictments.
I agree with you about the concept of debate. It reminds me of something that G.K. Chesterton wrote. He said, the debate ends with the thought that stops thought. And that's really what we saw with Charlie Kirk, sadly.
Yeah.
But, Donald Trump, he's gone on the offensive also with some of his own lawsuits. He had a very successful one. I think he settled with CBS. And now it was just announced, I read a story that he's filed a $15 billion defamation lawsuit against the New York Times, a former newspaper. And the New York Times, to my mind, is really at the head of the serpent, which is the leftist media. What do you know what this lawsuit is all about? Why he's claiming that they've defamed him? Yeah,
and I believe it's a series of events over the election, not just this most recent election, but between the elections. Their campaign contributions to Kamala Harris, basically saying you shouldn't be a newspaper saying you're independent, but then you're donating to the Harris campaign.
Right.
I have not yet had a chance to read it. I just saw it this morning. But I believe it's relating to their supposedly allegedly biased coverage of him, specifically for the election.
Right.
Which is great. I'm thrilled that he's doing it. I mean, somebody needs to hold these media companies accountable.
Right. It's sort of trying to restore some order to the public space, isn't it? And But folks, we're talking with Christina Bobb. She's a lawyer, and she's also an author of 2 books. One she wrote in 2023 called Stealing Your Vote, which dealt with election fraud, and a more recent one that she's just released in September of this year called Defiant, Inside the Mar-a-Lago Raid and the left's ongoing lawfare. And she's a lawyer who acts for Donald Trump. So you mentioned what happened with Charlie Kirk. If you don't mind, Christina, I'd like to sort of delve into this a bit more. In a recent polling, this is really shocking. It seems that many people, because of the media and sort of the spin that the media is putting on it, are under the impression that the perpetrator was a sort of MAGA Republican who thought that Charlie Kirk was not conservative enough. This is really shocking, but
Yeah.
it's flowing out of what's coming. And you posted about this on your X page recently. You said, notice who they are targeting. They want you to believe the right is violent while they plot assassinations. And you go, and they're talking about, I mentioned J.K. Rowling off the top of the show, but a whole bunch of really important public figures who are on the wrong side of the political debate.
Yeah.
And there's people, actually calling for their murder.
Yeah.
This is a really appalling and concerning development, isn't it?
Well, it's not true, and that's a lot of. That's the leftist news, leftist influencers trying to blame conservatives. The FBI has come out and confirmed that the shooter was transgender, that he had written on his bullets, catch this fascist. He thought Charlie Kirk was a fascist, which is crazy that the guy with the gun shooting the guy for speaking freely is calling him a fascist. Clearly there was some mental problems with him, but they've also confirmed through talking with his family and his roommate, girlfriend / trans gay boyfriend, however you want to define it, that he was very liberal, extremely woke, and did not did not share conservative principles whatsoever. So the whole idea that he was somehow a right-wing extremist is patently false.
Yeah. And so the lying continues. And the other thing that's kind of concerning is, when you talk about debate, and let's face it, who was Charlie Kirk? Well, Charlie Kirk was a man who, to some, was an evangelist, to others was a political activist. But all he was doing was going and visiting college campuses and talking to people. That's really all he was doing.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was publicly murdered, in some ways shows that that kind of debate has to end, or maybe has to change, doesn't it? Because it seems to me, and I want to get your take on this, when you think of a debate, you can't really have a meaningful debate with somebody unless we're following some type of rules, right? Any game has to have rules. And it seems to me what we're seeing is there's one side here that isn't following the rules of debate. And so we can't really have a meaningful debate if one side it takes the position that words are violence and that they can be answered and destroyed with a bullet.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this? I mean, how is someone like, for example, President Trump going to be able to try to restore some of the order so that people can't just go online or publicly and say things like, well, Charlie Kirk deserved it.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's just beyond the pale to say that.
Yeah. No, I
But
agree.
do you agree with me that before we can get back to a place where we can have meaningful debate, we've got to restore some sense of order and maybe some rules? What do you think about that?
Well, I think that they have destroyed debate.
Yeah.
And I don't think conservatives are going to stop debating. I think they'll have these public forums. I mean, we've seen several people come forward already saying, I'm hosting debates across, various universities. There's a lot of people stepping up to try to fill the gap. Of course, no one can fill Charlie Kirk's shoes, but there's thousands of people who are going to be doing it now. I think Turning Point had over 32,000 applications for new chapter openings across the country. So the debate is not slowing down, but I think conservative perspective of it is. This is not something conservatives have always believed. Like, if you want to be trans, if you want to be woke, if you want to, whatever, that's fine. Like, we don't care. You can go be trans. Just don't force it on me. They have proven to us that our existence offends them. And you can't, to your point, you can't debate people that way. So I think that it's important to recognize that college campuses must have debate, and they're going to continue to debate policies. But as far as the American people go and politicians go and our actual government now, I think we've hit a point where we say, okay, we just have to win. We have to win to the point. There's no middle ground. There's no common ground with people who think we should not exist. So I think that's where the debate ended. And so rather than conservatives just having meaningful discussion, they've mobilized us. And they've mobilized a lot of people who are fine with debate. Like, okay, let's just debate ideas and you can believe whatever you want and who cares? That's not the case anymore. They've mobilized people who were sitting on the sidelines going, I can't sit on the sidelines anymore.
Not to frame your next book, but it does seem to me that if we look at your first book, which is about election fraud, and then we look at your second book, which is about lawfare, the public murder of your political opponents is almost like the progression, isn't it? It's like the next, like the next level, isn't it?
Well, I have joked with my agent and my editor that, I think we're writing a trilogy because the first book really is kind of the preface. I mean, you don't have to read them together and you can read them in either order, but timelines, it does go in order. It's sequential. And so I'm really hoping there is a third book left. I'm hoping there's a trilogy because we've got to have a really good ending and the story's not over yet.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about is there are some people who I would say, I think it's fair to say, are responsible for creating this environment of violence. And the people who say that words are violence, people like Bernie Sanders, or, there's a post I saw from the Southern Poverty Law Center on your page, where they say violence is never the answer. We condemn the shooting of Charlie Kirk and all violence in any form. Our history shows violence only fuels division and justice requires peace. These words are pretty hollow from people who really have spurred all this on and called people like Donald Trump and Charlie Kirk Nazis, and really try to justify their murder. What do you think about this? Is this a good development, or is this really
they're lying? I mean, they're incapable of telling the truth. So they say it because they know
what you really think.
Yeah. No, they are. I mean, well, because if they tell the truth is they contributed to the problem, they contributed to his murder, and they're contributing to the downfall of free speech and debate. And of course they can't say that. So they lie about it. And I mean, I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah. And and the other thing that they've done, speaking about the left, is weaponize some of the institutions, institutions of learning, like universities, where Charlie Kirk was shot. And I saw a story about Arizona State University. My son is actually a freshman there.
Oh, that's where I graduated from.
Oh, wonderful. As Arizona State University caught sabotaging student-led memorial service for Charlie Kirk only days after assassination. My son actually attended that. He followed Charlie Kirk very closely, was looking forward to attending one of these events where Charlie was going to be speaking. But this is a big concern too, isn't it? I mean, universities, I know we've had violence before at universities, and maybe some of this was presaged by some of the stuff that was going on last year, where, for example, Jewish students were afraid to go to class. But really, having protesters come to protest a vigil for a man who was publicly murdered. This is really astonishing that it's happening at universities, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the university and the education system is a large part of the problem. I mean, here in the States, we've seen a lot of conservatives tracking the people who are celebrating Charlie Kirk's assassination. And an astonishing number, like way too high of a percentage of them are people who work in education. And that's scary. I saw one of some guy crying going, what am I supposed to tell my kids? He was a teacher who was celebrating the assassination. And he's like, what am I supposed to tell my kids? And it's like, we don't care what you tell your kids. We care what you tell our kids. And we don't want you telling our kids that it's okay to murder people because they disagree with you. And so, and I saw one meme that I really liked where it said, if you're anti-gun and you're celebrating your enemy getting shot, don't cry to me. And you're celebrating your enemy getting shot for what he said. Don't cry to me about getting fired for what you say.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so powerful. It's like you were celebrating a man getting murdered for what he said. And now you're crying that all you're getting is fired. You still get to live the rest of your life, but you're getting fired for what you said. Stand by it.
Yeah. Well, that's a good example of what I was trying to say earlier about maybe rather than responding in kind, which we can't do clearly,
Of course.
maybe what we can try to do, those of us who are opposed to what the left is doing, is we can try to restore some more order to the way
Hmm.
that people communicate publicly. By getting the people out of university, people losing their
Yeah.
jobs for saying things that are really out of bounds. And I'm ashamed to say this, but here in Canada, with some university professors, very high-ranking politician in Manitoba posted something disgusting celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder. There was a teacher teaching 10 and 11-year-olds who showed over and over again the video of Charlie Kirk being killed
Oh my
to 10 and
gosh.
11-year-olds and celebrating it. This is really awful. But I think
Oh,
I think what has to happen is we've got to try to restore some order
yeah.
back to the public space so that people have a sense of there are things that we should and should not say publicly. And
Well, I think that's
if you say
happening.
them, there's consequences, right?
Yeah, I think that's happening.
Yeah,
The fact that we're seeing so many of these liberals get fired is an amazing start. It's great.
yeah,
So I think the left has just been so unchecked for so long, and
yes,
I blame Republican politicians for that, Republican leaders for that, because for whatever reason they were too weak to push back for decades. Now that we've
yeah,
got social media, the American public is doing it. They're doing the
hmm,
job that Republican leaders have failed to do.
yeah,
So, yeah, I do think that's happening. I think we're not even close to being done, but it's starting to turn in the right direction.
yeah. Wouldn't it be remarkable if the man who started Turning Point America was actually responsible for a huge turning point
Yeah,
in all of this?
I think that's exactly what it is. He
Yeah.
is a turning point.
Hmm. Hmm. I want to ask you about one more thing before we let you go, and that
Mhm.
is um, there's something of I won't call it a conspiracy theory, but we could have anticipated this. But some are questioning the official story that's been offered by the FBI about the assassination of Charlie Kirk
Mhm.
as sort of being strange and improbable because of the timeline and things like this. Where's the bullet? Where's the autopsy? Where's the video footage from all the cameras on campus that they say they have? There's a
Mhm.
lot of questions that are unanswered. Um, what's your take on this? Do you think that we're getting the real story from
Yeah.
the authorities about how and why and who killed Charlie Kirk?
Yes, I do think we're getting the real story, but I think the story is incomplete. And
Right.
the FBI has basically said that. They're continuing the investigation. They have DNA evidence from the scene. They've got a confession from his cell phone where the day after he was chatting with his friends, he confessed to pulling the trigger. They've got confessions that he confessed to his parents. He said, there's a lot of evidence to indicate. I think they've even got DNA evidence that he left on the rifle, on the rag, on a screwdriver. And then, of course, they have all the video evidence of him, walking around. So I'm pretty confident that they've got the right guy, but it is incomplete. And just today, I saw the deputy director of the FBI talking about how they are now starting to investigate the people around him. Who knew? Who was in on it? Did anybody
Yeah.
support or assist him? So I do think they have the right guy, but I think the investigation is incomplete at this point.
Yeah, I have been hearing that, of course, through social media, that there are a number of people who seemed pretty sure that Charlie was going to be killed there at that particular event. That's very concerning. So I'm glad to
Yeah.
hear that they're investigating that.
Yeah.
Folks, we've been spending some time with Christina Bobb, who's a lawyer and an author. She's a lawyer for Donald Trump, and she's written about some of her experiences being a lawyer for Donald Trump, but also investigating and reporting on some of the most important legal issues of our time. Her first book, which is being added to our reading list today, is called "Stealing Your Vote." It's available on Amazon and elsewhere. And this book is about, I guess, what we could call the big lie about the 2020 election. She goes into detail about that and explains in great detail about how the cheating went on during the 2020 election. She's also talked about it here on our program. And this is a book that I've read, and it really answered a lot of questions that I had. I've read other books on this topic, for example, by Dinesh D'Souza, but this one really went into more detail than any book I've read about that election. So I strongly recommended that one. And the second book is called Defiant, Inside the Mar-a-Lago Raid and the Left's Ongoing Lawfare. Again, was just released. It's written by our guest. And maybe, Christina, you could explain to our viewers and listeners what this book is all about.
Yep, this is the inside story of the Jack Smith investigations and the Lawfare targeting Donald Trump and his supporters. I was a president for him at the time. I was an attorney for the president at that time. And so I've got text messages and emails in there. I've got all the dialogue and discussion with the Department of Justice and FBI and the Defense Council and everybody involved for the Mar-a-Lago raid. I was on the ground during the raid, so you get the whole scene. And then, of course, I went through my own lawfare and explain, all of the cases that really continue and why it is just so important that we end this once and for all.
Yeah, it sounds really fascinating. I'm looking forward to reading it myself. I recommend it to our audience. And I want to thank you very much, Christina, for taking this time with us to talk about your books and all the work that you're doing. It's really a pleasure to talk with you and wish you all the best with all the wonderful work that you're doing. And I particularly wish you best of luck with getting out of all of your legal trouble. That must be a real cross to bear.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for being our special guest. It's been my joy to spend some time with you here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to join you.
My pleasure.